book.
A book. Thanks. How do you interpret the results, Jens?
Yeah, interesting. I get a lot of questions about what's product discovery and what's innovation, what's the difference. So I think that's something we can touch on.
Yeah, Martin, your thoughts?
It is. It's interesting to look at the. I'm trying to look at the smaller words on the screen, and I'm seeing a lot about problem solving and customer centric, user focus, etc. And it can be definitely. So this would be interesting.
Innovation, vision, and exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the input. Let's go to the next chapter. So a story. And the story, so this is from the book. It's a real world case of a product. And I'm gonna read it. So I'm gonna put on my author voice. So awkward, the word that would have described the meeting. The product manager stated, "We just need to find the right customers." One of the team members said, "But no one seems to want to buy the product. Do we actually know if we fulfill the customer's needs?" And now, with an even more forceful tone, the product manager declared, "I know exactly what the customers want. I was a customer myself. It's not hard to build a great product. We just lack key features. If we just build them, the customers will open their wallets." So let's rewind the tape. 3 months earlier, the product manager had defined a clear and measurable business goal. The ambition was to build an analytics tool for businesses. With the goal in mind, a UX designer recruited and interviewed potential users of key target customers. To distill the insights, the UX designer reused a trusted persona template. The solution was subsequently defined in a prototype that was tested with a handful of users that fit the persona. The results were positive. The users really appreciated the functionality. It was time for the developers to pick up the baton. The UX designer joined the development team and worked iteratively and incrementally to refine the solution concept. The team used a technology framework they were comfortable with, which shortened the development time. There was great teamwork and no major hiccups. Launch day was just around the corner and the expectations were high. And then there was silence and more silence. The phone didn't ring. There were no customers standing in line. What happened next was that the team continued building features, and at the same time, the product manager expanded the sales team to find willing customers. But still, no customers signed up. Fast forwarding the tape, almost a decade later, the product still exists and doesn't have traction on its own. Even in retrospect, it might be hard to see all the intricacies that led to this failed product. Everyone did their best and the collaboration felt good. What do you believe were the causes? And yeah, we would love your input. What do you think were the causes to this failed product? So go to Slido and enter your thoughts. No validation, yeah. Yeah, Martin, do you want to interpret the results?
Well, they didn't check if anyone needs the product, someone said.
Yeah.
Definitely. No proper product discovery was done. Yeah, exactly.
User buy-in.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting points here, definitely. And I'm guessing that most of them were true in some sense or another.
They did not know their customer. customers not willing to pay for the product. Yeah, no need for the product. So thank you to everyone in the audience for giving me input.
We might want to say that we will come back to this story and talk about the actual issues at hand a little bit later.
Yes,
in the webinar.
We will dive deep. And kind of the common denominator here is bias. Hopefully you've heard the term before, but if you look it up in the dictionary, it says an inclination towards something or predisposition. I'm not going to read all the words. Maybe Martin, you have a better translation of what biases mean.
No, but it's a prejudice, as it says. You assume something.
Yeah.
Based, which is totally normal.
Yeah.
That you do.
And you're not open, right? You're sticking to your way of looking at things. And the first bias we want to talk about is confirmation bias. So you think about the product manager wasn't really open, right? And confirmation bias is about overvaluing stuff that confirms your beliefs and undervaluing what the facts say. So the product manager was not open. And another bias that we found from the story is optimism bias. Nope, not me. You think the best, will happen. The product manager said, we just lack the key features, and if we build them, the customers will open their wallets. Jens, Martin, any thoughts here on optimism bias?
I think it's, of course, you spend a lot of effort and time. You don't want to build something that nobody wants. Of course, you want to see that it's going to succeed in some way. Yeah.
Let's move to the next one. Output over outcome. So the product manager valued shipping features, right? And there's this simple equation that you might think about in product development, that if you just have an idea and if you build the features, we will make money. But that's kind of a fallacy, because there is no distinct correlation between the ideas and the stuff that you create, that it will actually create an outcome. And the outcome, if you think about the story, the outcome is something for the customer. So the customer wants to achieve something, and the business want to increase sales or whatnot. So the fallacy was that there was too much focus on getting features out rather than the outcome. And this is an absolute classic when it comes to product discovery. The sunk cost fallacy. Maybe you've heard the term, but it's from behavioral economics. And the quote kind of sums it up well. Why change now? We've already invested so much time and effort. So it's this fallacy that we work on a project for a long time. We feel that we have put a lot of effort in, a lot of time, and that it's really hard to pull the plug and to pivot or to change path because of this. We've invested so much in what we're doing.
It can be seen as pretty wasteful, I guess, of course, in general. But the problems really show up when you're really like you're beating a dead horse. The product is actually dead, but you're still investing in it because you have a belief that someone might use it. It might be good for someone. Yeah. That is when this one kicks in and can ruin your whole company.
Yeah, so you have a solution, you're searching for a problem, kind of. All right, question to the audience then. Have you experienced some of these biases? So it's quite binary, so yes and no. Very interesting to see the statistic here. So 12 people, yes, okay. 4 people, or yeah, 3%, no. So most of you have experienced these biases.
the no one is actually growing a little bit, at least. So it's up to 6%.
Yeah.
8%. And for you guys, I can just say congratulations, I think.
All right, should we move on to the next chapter? Product is hard. So over to you, Jens.
Yeah. Building products and services is hard. It's you think it's quite simple. You bring some people together. You have some designers, you have some developers, you have a product owner, you have a process, for example, agile, and then maybe you do some research, maybe you don't, but it's still very, very hard to succeed. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about a story that happened to me a few years ago. I was working as a consultant, and I was brought into a hotel company, and the hotel company said that they had some kind of problems that we might fix. So when we arrived, we met two gentlemen who was quite nervous. You know, the feeling when you enter a room and there's something wrong, and you start wondering what happened here. The two gentlemen, they told us that they've been working on a mobile product. They didn't have an in-house product team, so they had outsourced the design and development. So after 1 year of writing requirements, doing design and development, they had finally released their brand new product. The product was live, and nothing happened. Nobody wanted to use their product and rent rooms through their mobile. So the two gentlemen, they asked, what can be wrong? So we were asked to check a few technical things to see what could be wrong. They assumed that it must be some kind of technical flaw that made the product not be visible to the customers. But I thought that there was something else. There was something else that was wrong. So I asked them, have you talked to any customers? Which they, of course, said, no, we haven't. So my hypothesis was that they built something that nobody wanted. So what we did was that we did some customer research, and we quickly realized that this was true. So they built a mobile service for what they call businessmen on the go, that you could book hotel rooms when you are on a train or a plane. But the problem was that the customers did not have this problem or need. And this is something that happens so often, and I see it on a daily basis when I meet companies and organizations. You haven't validated any customer's needs. You haven't thought about it. You got a great idea and you went for it, and it failed, really. And just as Marcus talked about, there's so much biases in this, and it's really, really tricky to build these great products. And this shows in the numbers. The number one reasons why startup fails today is that there is no market need. There is no problem to solve, or maybe it's the wrong problem to solve. So the customers do not think the solution is worth the money or time to invest in. Ping. So we have one question here. Have you created something that didn't meet a customer need?
Interesting. The 80, or is it? That's,
yeah,
73. Yes.
And it's, yeah.
I'm happy for the no group. All right. Thanks for your input. Should we move to the next section, Jens?
Yes.
All right, Martin, tell us about building the right product. Now that we know that we have some biases to live with.
Because that is the key thing. We can't just build a product. It's it doesn't help. It's not a race to see who what product has the most features or something like that. It has to be the right features. It has to be the right thing for several stakeholders in this, actually, both users, customers, the organization itself, etc. So next slide, please. Then you really need to understand what it's required to do, and you have to contextualize that to your situation. There is no one-size-fits-all recipe for this. And when there isn't a one-size-fits-all recipe, what you basically need is a deep understanding of what you're doing. You can't just start building things or follow any recipe, since it doesn't really work. Clean. So it is not a phase that you go through, discovery. Like Dan and Brown says, it's a mindset. It's an attitude. So it's something you think, something you realize, something you believe in, and then you translate that into your actions, and you basically build your own way of working. This is, of course, hard, and we're going to help you with that. So continue. So what we said before, discovery is about finding, building the right thing, and that means we need to find the right problem to solve. So we need to explore what the problem space exists of, and what is important in the problem space. And we need to find a solution that actually solves that problem, and that is the right solution. And that can be any solution. That can actually be something that is definitely not in the IT realm at all. It can be a checklist on a piece of paper for your customer or user. So what we do in discovery, what our mindset is that we focus on learning and gathering as much knowledge as possible. And if we know that we need to understand what the problem is, we need to understand what the good solution is, and don't think about we shall build a mobile app, for instance. Then we have the right mindset, and then we can work from there. But we're going to give you a little bit more today. We're going to give you some principles. We're going to give you some framework as well, because it's nice to have guardrails along the way. We will just make sure that we don't put up blockers for you. So for some of you, this might be a little bit fuzzy, but we'll try to make it as tangible as possible during this webinar. So Jens, over to you.
Yeah, so principles, I think it's a good way to, of working because as Martin says, it puts guardrails and it give good options for you and the team and organizations to work in a quite similar way, which could help get quality and efficiency. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about 3 principles. And the first one, problems over solutions, outcomes over outputs, and teams over individuals. I think what you should do in your team or in your organization is try to describe your principles and the way you work to kind of align the teams and the team and organization to work in a kind of similar way, and say, this is important for us. For example, we believe in teams and so on. So if we go to the first one, problems over solutions, and you can take next one too, is the thing about falling in love with the problem, and sometimes reframe the question and seeing new perspectives. So when I worked with a bank, we were talking with a business area that handled home loans and mortgages. But the only thing they saw was the solution, what they were selling, like we are selling mortgages. So what we did was to help them reframe the question and see new perspectives. And what we did was that we only asked why we should sell home loans and mortgages. They thought for a while and then landed in a more kind of understanding of the problem, the needs and wants of the customers. And here, for example, we give people and their families a safe home. And by getting this insight, they could now start to innovate on other solutions that would solve the customer needs, like insurance, home products, and so on. So going back to understanding what is the problem, then what you sell and what is the solution will be different from time to time, right? And then outcomes over output. So if you understand the needs and wants of the customer, it's much easier to create products and services that the customer wants and maybe even pay for. So when I work in organization, I try to create a culture where I talk more about outcomes instead of outputs. Most organizations, they talk about when is it done, when is this feature delivered, when is this activity done, and I want to talk more about creating value, creating these outcomes, creating some kind of change in the behavior at the customers. And from an internal perspective, it's more fun, it's more motivating to create these values and outcomes instead of just being this kind of feature factory team. So, bling. And lastly, the teams over individuals. I like to stress the importance of a diverse team with a mission. I often meet groups of people that work together to create outputs and features. They are not really what I call a real team. We just put people together and they don't have a aligned mission where they are going. They don't have a team spirit. They only do what they are told. So to create something as hard as a product service, you really need a great team, a team that would trust each other. Because innovation and creating something new is just like an adventure, and there will be lots of uncertainty, just like in the Goonies movie. Bling.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Over to you, Martin, to talk about the framework.
So we came up with these features during our work, and we've come up with some more features, principles. Now I'm going output over outcome here. We came up with these principles and some more principles, and we quickly realized that people need something a little bit more tangible. But what I often see is that people create a sort of a recipe or a checklist or something, and that will end up being more of a blockage for people. So I set to work here and try to create a very holistic and yeah, like the other boys in this said before, a guardrail framework that should just help you. If you need to not fall, if you feel like you're falling, you should just be able to stretch out your hand and feel that you get some kind of stability again. That was the aim for this. So I said holistic a few seconds ago, and what I mean by that is that I noted that, for instance, in the story that Marcus told before, we had customers and we had users, and they were two different kinds of people. They were two different roles in this. And we also had stakeholders within the organization, and we also had people having to support this. We had the sales organization, we had the development teams who had to maintain the product, build and maintain the product. So I realized that there are more parts to this than just focusing on one, only having one focus, such as customer-centric focus or so. So I found this, it's called 3 pillars of innovation, or 3, oops, I've forgotten the word, 3 qualities of great products, I think, and balanced team focus is also a name for this. So it's an old Venn diagram showing that you need to look at user value and business value and practical feasibility, and the intersection between those will give you the right outcome. So that was what I based my idea on. Bling. And the user value, we've included a few questions for you to look at, and I won't go into detail, but we have talked about it. Does the product fulfill the needs of the customer user, basically? Does it help the user? And the business value is very important as well. If it only helps the user and you can't make money of it, then we have no business. So we need to reach that as well. And when I'm saying business, I also mean other organizational needs, like if you're within government or a non-profit or so, it works as well. And you have also a need to see, can we actually do this? Will this fit in our current organization? Do we have the skills to build and to help users and to actually make money and to build something? And is the product that we build reasonable to use in our current ecosystem, etc.? And is it sustainable, which is a really important question today in any kind. So all these 3 needs to work together. And then we started looking at, okay, so what kind of structure would be beneficial? Well, we have been talking about it, and I saw your tags before. We need to have a way to know what the right problem is, and we need to know what the right solution is. And within user experience, this has been, well, we've had methods since the 50s, 60s to work on finding the right problem and the right solution. This one here depicted is the double diamond, and it's just a new version of user experience or human-computer interaction or ergonomic design or whatever you want to call it. And it says that to find the right problem, you need to first explore the problem area, and then yeah, you can take that one, and then you need to kind of analyze, prioritize, and structure the problem to make it tangible to work with. And then you can start innovating, ideating, finding different possible solutions. And as many of you wrote, after that, you need to validate that these solutions will actually solve the user problem. And this whole thing should happen apart, a little bit apart, connected to, but apart from actually doing something output-wise, delivery, whatever you would call it. Because the focus here is, as we said before, to gain knowledge, to learn. And it's not good to totally disconnect them, but to at least start by doing this. So we connected these two ideas, the 3 pillars innovation and the double diamond, into one 12-field strong matrix that we call the holistic product discovery framework. And wait a minute, Marcus is quick. What this does is that not a lot of other methods are focusing on like either the business side of things or the user value side of things. Especially UX methods are all in the user value row in this. But it's equally important to explore the problem space from a business perspective and from a technical or practical feasibility perspective. So that's why we need to have this whole thing, basically. And what Marcus really wants me to talk about right now is go back to the story he told and what actually happened there. And if we map this out to what we know from the story on the business value row, if you remember, he said that some business owner, product manager came with a very clear and concise business goal that was very structured in a way that the team could gather around and start working with. But in the end, we didn't actually have any customers. And by just mapping this into the structure, we can see that we have two huge holes. We didn't explore problems on the business value side, which means what actually happened. And the thing was, as the story goes, is that the product manager didn't actually ask any customers before if they had a problem. It was an idea from that person, which was underpinned by all the biases we mentioned before. How hard can it be to build a great product, basically? And we didn't have any, we didn't innovate solutions in this story anyhow, but I don't know if that would have mattered. The real thing was explore problems. So you can do this for every row. We can look at what the UX person did. She was interviewing users. She did personas, I think Marcus said, persona template, and did prototyping and testing. And what was interesting here was that the users were really happy with this analytics tool. But since the users weren't the same person as the one holding the money bag, that didn't help. Basically, and then we have a hole in innovate solutions and user value here, but that probably didn't affect the thing that customers didn't want to buy it. Might have been. And when we look at technical or practical feasibility, basically nothing was done. Marcus mentioned that the developers used a framework and that they were technical framework that they were that they had used before and were comfortable with. And I don't know, we don't know if it had made a difference, but it might have. If the problem hadn't been that there were no customers for this tool, this is a sure way to help us find what else we might miss. And of course, you need more guidance than this. So as a bonus slide, we put in the next one. No, okay, wrong order. Give me the next one, and then I'll go back to this one. So here are some examples of questions you can ask yourself to try to cover all of this, all in this matrix. So for instance, the product manager should have asked, what is our market landscape? Is there a need for the customers to have this thing? The UXer asked, what is the user's context and need, and saw a need, but that didn't help us to actually exploit the market gap, because there were no market gap, or there might have been, but it might have looked a little bit different. So these are pretty good questions. These are only examples, but these are pretty good questions to ask yourself along the way. But previous slide. This is called the Design Squiggle. Someone created it like 20 years ago, I think. It represents, it's not supposed to go on top of this framework, but it represents that we don't know a specific way through this framework. We don't know where we will end up. A normal starting point is usually top left corner, where you ask your stakeholders, what is the market need? And they might give you a business case or a business goal or something to work from. And then the other two rows can start working, basically. You can start working with the other two rows. But what the Design Squiggle actually also tells us, apart from it goes over all over the place, is that we want to spend as much time as possible in problem space. Because if we actually understand the problem, we will create a solution that will help us build the right thing. And I mean, life's too short not to build the right thing, basically.
And just to make it tangible as well, I mean, we've all used this framework as a mental model when working with teams. And so, you know, it could be a post-it exercise in a workshop. So what types of tools and tactics do we use within the team? And then we can see where we have gaps. And most commonly, you have gaps in feasibility. So you're not collaborating enough with engineers. And as Marty Kagan says, a lot of innovation comes from the engineering side. So you have a big opportunity as a team to work more closely with engineering and to connect business and the user's perspective as well, which we see is a big gap working in product development.
Yeah. To kind of wrap this part up, is this framework, the principles and the mindset we have is meant to counter all the biases we have. So it's about lowering the risk of you building the wrong product.
Yes. All right. Thanks for that, Martin. Let's open for questions. Thanks for listening to the presentation. Now we open up for questions. Go. All right. I might have to drop out. Let's skip that one. When you say team, which team do you mean? Do you understand that question, Martin or Jens?
When you say team, what team do you mean? I would say a team could, of course, be have a different setup depending on what kind of product or service you're building. But many times what we talk about, some kind of product team that are diverse, that have different kind of competences, like technology, customer or design, and some kind of feasibility. So you need all these three perspectives that we're talking about. We need that in the team to do the end-to-end delivery.
But to start with, just to make it a little bit easier, that would be that's definitely not the end goal that you're describing, Jens. It's a very good place to be from very early on. But since we have set structure in a lot of companies, try to start by just asking yourself these questions that I suggested, regardless of what team you might be in. I'd say you need to start somewhere. We can't rebuild the organization before we start. So start asking the question.
All right, can you hear me okay? I seem to have an issue with my connection, but how to make sure that you get good representation of customers' feedback and not only listen to a few customers that might mislead you?
There are a lot of good methods for this that people like business analysts and requirements engineers or UX people can help you with. Well, there are people with that kind of competence, and I would suggest you try to find them and hire them, basically. I mean, this is psychology in different ways, and interviewing techniques, etc. And there are definitely a lot of different ways of doing this to ensure you get a good spread. And so get expert help, I would say.
So that one is one way. I also think that one thing that you could do, it depends on what kind of experiment you're doing. You could do qualitative data or interviews talking to your customers, that one way. You can do quantitative analytics by looking at data from like a behavior perspective. Or you could do like these Wizard of Oz or concierge kind of experiments that kind of tricks customers into trying to buy things, but you don't have anything under the hood. But that's one way of trying to find like the viability part of the and of course the desirability perspectives of the product and service.
Thanks, guys. Yes, we will record the webinar, just so we're clear. And what does this discovery workshop look like? Can I take that one? So there are many different discovery workshops, I would say, but one that's really powerful in my experience is to bring in the entire team, so engineers, QA, designers, product owners, what have you, into a room for a really short workshop, like 1 hour, and to just pose questions. Like write on post-its, what kind of questions do we want to answer during discovery? What do we want to learn? That could be a great way to kind of kick off discovery for your product, because then you can cluster what we want to answer to see, you know, we might need to do some customer interviews, we might need to do some business analysis and so on. So it could be a great way to kind of align everybody in terms of what you want to learn. Jens, Martin, any input from you guys regarding discovery workshops?
There are many of them.
Yeah, there are many.
Yeah,
any favorites? Any favorites that?
I think that's one. You could, of course, do these kind of hypothesis exercises. Try to be more, because what I've learned that many teams they have questions, but they don't kind of define them too. They don't really define them too well. So they go out and do an experiment, and then they come back and try to do some analytics and find insights about them. But the questions are too broad, and then it's hard to do some kind of real insights or find kind of, you can't really validate the hypothesis. And what I've learned is kind of it takes quite a lot of time to do these kind of hypotheses and do them well-defined hypotheses, because you need numbers, and then you have to do some kind of what do you call a base test before, but to get like what's the current level if you want to increase something. So that's but that was something that I think is important.
I just realized that I think for me it's not the workshop that's most important in discovery. It's getting out there and actually understanding what stakeholders and users, etc., wants and needs.
It's easy to have a workshop, right?
Yeah, and the workshop you should have then is to kind of in your team decide upon which questions you should ask them. And then you should go out and ask them. And then when you come back, you should have a workshop together to summarize your findings and bring out insights from it.
Yeah. Another question regarding education, kind of pop down here. I think I got the gist of the question, but how do you educate stakeholders outside of your team the importance of doing product discovery and customer interviews and stuff like that? So any tactics that you want to share, Martin and Jens, regarding how to get people excited about product discovery?
Bring them along. Bring them along. That's the best way. Bring them so they can see well, how the customer behaves, what they're saying. That's the best way.
Can I just mention an anecdote? So I worked with one company and to kind of shift the perspective from output to outcome. And so what we what we coached them was to do customer interviews together as a team. So, product owners, engineers, and designers interviewed customers together. And we went there a couple of months after they started doing customer interviews together. And one of the engineers said like, oh, now I understand, like our current product doesn't solve a problem. We are working on fixing that. And that person was so excited. So just doing customer interviews, talking to customers can have a profound impact on just selling product discovery and also making the product more successful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Martin, did you want to add anything?
No, you all said it. I'm definitely go out there with the people.
And we touched upon that, but Anonymous, thank you. Reading Martin Kagan, he's very keen on involving engineers early in the discovery process, i.e. yes. Interviewing customers. Your thoughts on that? I think we shared some thoughts, but I wanted to mention one thing is that there's a lot of pushback when it comes to grabbing engineers and letting them do customer interviews. It's weird, right? Like it's much easier for a product owner and designer to do customer interviews, but if you want to grab an engineer to do customer interviews, it's like, oh no, engineers, we have so much stuff to code.
Okay.
Do you have experience with that?
Martin Kagan had a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
All right. I think it's about the culture in many companies that the teams are feature factories and they should sit by the computers and hack. I think that's. And that's a cultural thing that's really hard to change. It's a mindset that you need to change, which is really hard.
I've seen. I think it was Martin Kagan. Now I'm getting a little bit nervous here. There might have been someone else, but there was a graph showing. Do you want your developers to build the right product, or do you want them to build a product equals waste, kind of, because it's not necessary. So if you have a bunch of people saying, oh, I need to code this or I need to build this, etc., I still think it's more important to make sure you build the right thing. So really most people should be focusing on discovery throughout the development project. And a few people can then work on delivery because that's less important. And then I know someone said, or it was a side note to that one, but if no one builds anything, then we won't get anything out. Yeah, sure, but if you get the wrong thing out, that's worse. That's and I think that mindset is kind of hard to shift, and that's what we're struggling with.
The question kind of touching upon that, do you use product discovery through the whole life cycle of the product?
Yes, it's a continuous collaborative thing that you need to do, and you should always start a little bit with understanding the problem, but then as soon as possible, of course, you'd like to have like real data, if you call it that. But yeah. I think product discovery ends like 2 days before the end of life on your product.
And we got a high voted question here: how to measure business value and user value?
Yeah, I think you have to go back to look at the strategy, and if you look at a business strategy and look for what are we aiming for as a company, and try to find out how to measure those strategies. How do you break down that to KPIs or something similar? And for user, and many times it comes back to cost, efficiency, some kind of monetization or something like that. And for user value, you have to look for like customer loyalty, satisfaction, usability, those kind of measurements.
Needs fulfillment.
Yeah, and I can chime in. I think the best way is to measure business value and user value in the same metric. It's hard, but there can be ways to merge. And Johan, you asked about any book, video to recommend on this topic. It's not completely related to product discovery, but a really good book is the North Star metric. And another book, Product-Led Growth, that touches upon kind of the metrics side of things and how to measure that you're building the right thing. And the gist of those books is to find metrics that kind of combine business value and user value. So since Marcus on my book isn't released properly yet, you can always give us feedback that we should have a chapter about measuring. Yes, thank you. All right, should we do one last question before we sum up? Let's see, what's this one? Popular. Can't see it because I have all these things. I am asked to put together a small team to do product discovery. Oh, it disappeared. Did you catch the question? No. Let me try to find it.
So what do we have in interesting questions here? Which ones haven't we talked about?
Trying to find them now.
There's one that's highest up here, most thumbs up that we haven't asked for, which is based on your matrix and your experiences, where do you typically see teams, organizations forgetting to spend time? I think that's a good question.
All right, grab it.
Yeah, go ahead. Marcus, Jens.
Tell it again.
Based on your matrix and your experiences, where do you typically see teams and organizations forgetting to spend time?
I think one area that I see often missed is the second part, which we call a structure or defining the problem. You go out and do discovery, and then you come back and then you start ideate on that or open up the process, but you forget to really define what is the problem to solve. And I see this, which makes it really hard when you go into an ideation phase, because everybody's all over the place because you haven't defined the problem first. So I think that's often missed.
Definitely problem space, yes. I always push the people I coach to stay longer in problem space. And by longer, I don't mean like months, because that's not necessary, but at least a few more days.
All right, guys, should we summarize? We got some screaming kids in the background, so apologies for that. But just to summarize what we talked about during this webinar. So it's about mindset, it's about principles and frameworks. And we mentioned a few principles, but you can really work with your team to define your own principles, and we highly recommend that. But you need all, and these are guardrails, so something to hold on to in your team. And just to mention that we will be running a course, product discovery for product owners, online. So it's a remote course. So it's 4 half-day workshops. And so if you're interested, let us know, and you'll get a 10% discount if you use the code FRIENDS, or a 20% discount if you're a group of more than 5 participants from an organization. And just to do our own product discovery on you guys, given what we talked about, the framework and so on. So be honest, because we're trying to, this is a first remote course for us, so we would like to get your feedback.
Can I sell it a little bit more?
Do it, Martin.
Yeah,
do it.
You'll get more principles, and you'll get a deeper understanding of the framework, and you will understand how to use the framework in your organization, and you'll practice specific methods to use in the framework, so that you can be up and running directly after the course. So it's not the theoretical focused course, it's a lot of practice.
Well, thanks for selling it, man.
Yeah, and another thing, I think one thing is that to listen to to others and hear their different perspectives and experiences. I think that's also a good thing that are the students like, or yeah.
And
well,
to get some, just to get some user. Sorry for cutting off. Just to get some insight on why you wouldn't be interested, so we can frame the course around the needs of the students, right? So just write that. We won't feature that on screen, but just to give that input would be highly appreciated.
That would be great. We could possibly add as well that the course is aimed at product owners, but it's definitely and anyone can come who are working somewhat within product.
Just give that 30 more seconds and then we show the last slides.
Maybe it's a hard question.
Yeah, and as Marcus said, it won't show up here, so that might make you a little bit more courageous in answering it. It would help us a lot. But that's the payment for attending the webinar, right?
Yeah.
All right, that was our last slide, and it would be highly helpful as well if you answered the last survey. Just so, yeah, thank you very much for joining the webinar. We hope it was, you know, you learned new things, you took away the framework, you learned somewhat about the principles, you got some stories from product development. So thank you for listening, and please reach out to us if you have more questions. You can find us on LinkedIn. Any last words, Martin and Jens?
Yeah, I don't know. Get out there.
Yeah, good one. Get out there. Do your homework.
Yeah.
And just so we can make this presentation better in the future, we have a last end survey. So we won't be showing that on the screen, but we would be very thankful if you would give us some input on the contents and so on. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great evening or great morning to you in Los Angeles, and we'll see you soon.